Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Sunday, August 11th. Over the next few days, we will see increases to wind across the Great Basin, especially across Nevada and up into parts of Idaho and Wyoming the next few days. These wind gusts will generally be between about 25 and 35 miles per hour with single-digit or low relative humidity. Otherwise, wetter thunderstorms will continue for the next few days across Utah, and we will have some weak disturbances embedded in the main trough causing these gusty winds that will move across Idaho and Wyoming over the next couple of days, which will increase lightning activity. These thunderstorms up north will be more of a mix of wet and dry and could actually be occurring at times during the overnight hours or early morning hours, both going into Monday morning and Tuesday morning in parts of Idaho. Precipitation over the last 24 hours, you can see a significant amount of thunderstorms over Utah and even up over central and eastern Idaho and Wyoming. These thunderstorms were definitely wetter further south, and we had many areas above a quarter or a half inch, pretty widespread across central and southern Utah into the Arizona Strip. Further north, we did have some wetting rains even across the Salmon Chalice and up into central and eastern Idaho. These precipitation amounts were not quite as plentiful as areas further south, but there definitely were some areas that saw over a tenth or even up towards a two-tenths of an inch of precipitation. Yesterday, we had 26 new fires for 156 acres. We did move to PL5 across the Great Basin, and we continue to see initial attack daily and new large fires emerging. Over the last 7 to 14 days, we have seen generally drier conditions over western and southern Nevada, even into parts of southeast Utah and up into Idaho. The main wetter areas have been over Arizona Strip into southern Utah. The ERC percentile map reflects that fairly well, showing the lower ERCs and on the downward trend over the southern half of the Great Basin with the moisture in place. Otherwise, ERCs over western and northern areas are a mixed bag of above the 80th to 90th percentile in some spots, certainly in the drier areas. We did have our ERCs come down a bit up in Idaho, in central Idaho, just with the moisture that has been affecting some of the area. Here's a couple of our current ERC charts, both today where we'll see wind conditions over the next couple of days in northwest Nevada. You can see ERCs are between the 80th and 90th percentile, but might be tracking slightly downward as we do see a little bit of cooler temperatures move in with this main trough on the west coast. And looking in the southern areas in the Spring Mountains, where we did have some new fires yesterday, ERCs are still above normal, but will be trending somewhat upwards. The satellite image from this morning shows the moisture in place over the southern half of the Great Basin, that cloud cover, and we will see those, again, thunderstorms, especially across Utah and into Arizona. Otherwise, a broad trough off the west coast that will be moving eastward and enhancing our winds here the next few days, and also bringing some upper level disturbances to Idaho for periods of thunderstorms over the next few days. Otherwise, smoke conditions really won't change much with that southwest winds. We will continue to have smoke pushed over the northern half of the Great Basin. And looking at our weather pattern for later today, you can see that trough, again, the deeper moisture in Utah and parts of Arizona. But as that trough gets a little bit closer, we will see the winds pick up today over the Sierra Front and in southern areas of the Great Basin. So we do have high risk to indicate that. And looking at the relative humidity, this is definitely where our RHs will be the lowest in the single digits over much of Nevada, with the exception of the far south and southeast portion of the state. Otherwise, up in Idaho, we will see RHs in the teens. And you can see those winds increase, probably gustiest along the Sierra Front, which is where we'll see gusts around 35 miles per hour or even a tad bit higher, and then more in the 25 to 30 mile per hour range in the south. But you can see the gusty outflow winds across Utah, obviously the main concern, but RHs will be quite a bit higher, so we will see some moisture again. Temperatures will be near seasonal averages in the mid-90s for the valleys over the northern half of the Great Basin and near 106 down south. You can see the thunderstorms again today, mainly focused over eastern areas, with a day of probably a thunderstorm free over parts of Idaho into Wyoming. As we go into tomorrow, we will have another wave that moves north across Idaho, so we are expecting thunderstorms to redevelop in central Idaho. We could even see some early morning thunderstorms in some of these areas, so we do have high risk to indicate both some early morning chances, but also better chances for more coverage during the afternoon. Then as the trough continues to move closer to the area, we will see a broader area of gusty winds and low humidity, so large area of high risk for that tomorrow. And you can see that here on the RH picture. Teen or single digit relative humidity is really confined to northwest Nevada into southwest Idaho with more low teens in other areas. And you can see from the wind picture here, definitely an increase in winds tomorrow, which will likely be some of our strongest winds, where we'll see gusts above 40 miles per hour for southern and eastern Nevada into far western Utah, and then also into western Nevada. So coupled with those lower relative humidity and recent lightning, definitely a high risk there. Up into Idaho, again, mainly thunderstorm potential. You can see a couple hints at some gusty outflow winds, but also just an increase in southwesterly winds in central and eastern Idaho as well. Otherwise, a strong potential for some gusty outflow winds in Utah, but again, will be accompanied by higher humidity and RH, or higher humidity and some rainfall. And you can see the temperatures take a little bit of a dip over western Nevada on Monday as that trough approaches. And then the moisture, definitely deeper moisture still in Utah, but you can see up north is where we'll see some of those clusters of thunderstorms in central and eastern Idaho and Wyoming. Otherwise, on Tuesday, still continued chances for lightning. Again, could be some early morning lightning in central Idaho on Tuesday morning, as well as in the afternoon. So still have some high risk for lightning up there. And then still some gusty winds in a little bit more localized fashion in western and southern Nevada, but obviously lower fire danger across Utah with that moisture in place. And you can see how the RHs couple with the winds. Again, much smaller areas of wind for western and southern Nevada where the RHs are low. We will see an increase in winds for Utah. However, RHs still being on the higher side, and we've had plenty of days of recent moisture leading up to it, so no high risk for those, but definitely something to pay attention to, as we will see some gusty winds outside of thunderstorm activity, more mainstream winds. And then up into eastern Idaho and Wyoming, gusty winds also up there do not have any high risk just because of the higher humidity, but with the recent lightning, definitely something to pay attention to in the coming days. Otherwise, temperatures tick down even further on Tuesday and actually end up being several degrees below normal over the northern half of the area, with highs only in the mid to upper 80s. And you can see from the thunderstorm potential, still moisture moving across the north, still more of a mix of wet and dry thunderstorms up north and wetter storms down south. 3-day precipitation, you can see that deeper moisture in Utah and down into the Arizona Strip, where we're looking at a 3-day total of areas over an inch or even over an inch and a half in some areas. And then up north, obviously not quite as wet, but still some decent moisture for western Wyoming into eastern Idaho. And then continued dry conditions from southwest Idaho into Nevada. As we go through the middle of the week, we will see the winds relax a bit, so no high risk on Wednesday as the trough starts to lift north and the ridge flattens out a bit, but still dry air in place for the western half of the Great Basin and continued isolated thunderstorms further east. That dry air pushes further east on Thursday, so another rather benign day. However, we do have some moisture in Oregon that could push into parts of Idaho, and then the winds again will be increasing later in the week, especially for western areas as that trough strengthens off the west coast. So no high risk yet, but we'll be watching some areas in the west just with the combination of dryness and gusty winds. And then the 7-day total precipitation, much of that really falling in the next few days, especially with moisture in the eastern side of the Great Basin. And then the 8 to 14-day outlook takes us from August 18th through the 24th, still showing warm temperatures near the Four Corners area and near normal conditions further west, but with those troughs in place, a little bit breezier, and then could see some moisture over northern areas. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back tomorrow for the latest updates.